Hello and what's up guys, it's Tekosaur. So Intel has finally stepped in by making their own overclocking profile for their Core Ultra 200 series desktop CPUs. You can see here in this page made by Intel explaining about this new feature. They say here it's an overclocking profile designed for unlocked Intel Core Ultra 200S series processors such as Core Ultra 265K, which is the one that I'm going to use in this video, and also paired with a compatible Intel Z890 motherboard. So for B motherboards, it may not work. So for now, it's only exclusive feature for Z890, and it's the ones that I'm going to use. And finally, an appropriate Intel XMP memory model. So that's going to allow the user to achieve higher fabric, die-to-die, and memory frequency. Combining all of them is going to boost performance and lower latency. We're gonna see about it, and it's going, they say here, to retain 3 years limited warranty provided by Intel. And that's quite interesting because when we overclock our CPUs manually, or whether we are using a feature by motherboard vendor, and even using XMP or Expo profile for Ryzen CPUs and also Ryzen TPO, they are all going to void your warranty or may void your warranty depending on your region and warranty policies. This time instead, this one 200S Boost overclocking profile designed by Intel is made in a way that it's going to retain your 3-year limited warranty by them. So that's quite interesting. So here in this table, we can see default specs for Intel Core Ultra 200SK processors. Fabric, also known as SoC Tile NGU, is 2.6 GHz. And with this boost, it's going to be up to 3.2 GHz. And die-to-die, at default, it's 2.1 GHz. And with this boost, it's going to be 3.2 GHz. So that's an uplift in this kind of frequencies for fabric and die-to-die. And finally, DDR5 memory model, UDIM, CODIM, 1 DIM per channel. So at default, before overclocking, it defaults as 6400 MTS or 3200 MHz. With this new 200S boost overclocking profile, it's going to be up to 8000 MTS or 4000 MHz. And you can see here that the model VDDQ and VDD should be equal or less than 1.4 volt. So for kits that are more than 1.4 volt, they may not work. And we are going to see about it in this video because mine are actually above than 1.4, and we are going to see how it's going to work. So rest assured if you have this kind of situation. Let's get on to this figure, and you can see here that fabric/NGU located on the SoC tile. You can see it here. And we also have the integrated memory controller, the IMC, located also on the SoC tile. And also here they show die-to-die located between tiles. So you can see those are the 3 components that we are going to boost by using this 200S boosting overclocking profile. It's going to do its boosting by changing the frequencies and some parameters. So that's quite interesting. You can see here supported processors are Intel Core Ultra 9, 285K, 265K, 265KF, 245K, and 245KF. So I'm going to use 265K in this video. You can see here supported motherboards as of April 22. Select Intel Z890 based motherboards with the newest BIOS will have the option to run 200S boost overclocking profile. However, this list is not exclusive of all compatible motherboards. So here they show some motherboards for ASRock, Asus, Color 4, Gigabyte, Maxon, and MSI. However, this doesn't mean that only those models are supported, as mine isn't shown here and it's still supported. There is also a full Intel XMP memory list. So here you can check if yours is listed here. However, it's not really exclusive. It's just that those ones have been tested. So you can see here we have hardware limitations. Motherboard design, layout, BIOS optimization, and other components play a crucial role in overclocking. Some motherboards may lack the necessary optimization to activate the Intel 200S boost profile. Additionally, not all memory models are rated for the parameters of this program, and users may experience system instability until the overclock is reverted. So in case you have any kind of issues, you can still revert back in BIOS and nothing is going to happen. So you can see here, also they state 2 memory sticks per channel. Configurations are not supported depending on the memory model or motherboard design. Users could nevertheless see higher memory speeds with 4 UDIM configurations as well. So I'm going to use 2 sticks in this video, 1 DIM per channel. And here you can see how to apply. You need to update BIOS and then enable 200S boost profile in your BIOS and restart your system, run a stability test, and monitor performance. The 200S boost warranty applies to Intel box processors. For box processor support, contact Intel support or place of purchase. If your PC was purchased through a system builder or OEM, your warranty and support for that warranty are provided exclusively by the system builder or OEM. So if you have a non-box CPU like a tray, it's not going to cover for warranties. That's our disclaimers. Let's get on to the motherboard that I'm going to use in this test. So I'm going to use the Z890 AORUS Elite Xis. A great motherboard. I've been running it for quite some time on this CPU and it's been quite good, very stable, no issues whatsoever. You can see in terms of performance, it has 16 plus 1 plus 2 VRM design, and they are at 80 amperes power stages. So it has a great amount of power stages, enough, and it has full length PCI slots, with the first one being Gen 5 and the second one Gen 4, as well as the third one Gen 4. And it has 5 M.2 slots, with the first one being Gen 5, while the other 4 are Gen 4. And it also has a great support for memory overclocking in general. It supports up to 9500 MPS for memory overclocking, so quite nice. A lot of headroom for overclocking. And you can see here, it has also ILM design, so it's going to provide better cooling for CPU, better orientation, so it's not going to bend like the other ILM design. Great cooling in general in this motherboard. I didn't notice any kind of overheating like VRMs or anything. It has great connectivity for the rear I/O. So it has 4 USB 2, 4 USB 3.2, 1 Thunderbolt, 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2, and a LAN port and the Wi-Fi 7. It has 4 SATA, 1 sensor panel link. So if you have a small monitor that you are going to connect for a sensor panel, you can hook it in using this integrated HDMI slot, and very DIY friendly. So it has M.2 easy latch for releasing the SSD. So you don't need to have any kind of screw here, and it has nice mechanisms here. Also for the PCIe for GPU, you can click on this button to release the GPU from the PCI slot, and it has a Wi-Fi easy plug. You can just connect it easily, and it has quick flash plus, easy debug zone. So if you are looking for a white motherboard, I would recommend checking this one out. Now I would like to show you the BIOS that I got, which is released in 18th of April 2025. So you can see here in the description, it says, introduce Intel 200S Boost, a feature designed to boost gaming performance with pre-configured overclocking profile built by Intel. So you can see this BIOS version that I'm going to use has this 200S Boost feature. It's nice that AORUS got this support immediately. Same day I got this BIOS. So here we are in BIOS. I just went to the advanced mode, and you can see here we have Intel 200S Boost. So that's a new feature. Here when you press on enable, they explain about it. It's a profile that allows you to increase performance in some applications while retaining your CPU warranty. will enable XMP up to 8000 MTS. Any speed above will be reduced and disable any overclocking attempt. So it's going to lock on all kind of overclocking settings, so you can combine both of them. So you can see here when I pressed enable, they said that Intel 200S Boost requires XMP memory with values for VDD/VDDQ less or equal to 1.4 volt. So mine are on this Patriot memory model for 8000 MTS is rated at 1.45 volt. So it's higher by 0.0 volt. When you press on OK, it wouldn't apply it. So there is a workaround that I found. I show you the SPD setup for my memory model for the first profile, which is the 8000 frequency speed. It has 1.45 volt for VDD and VDDQ. Also for XMP2, which is 7800 frequency speed. It has also 1.445 volt. And finally for XMP profile 3, 7600. Also for VDD and VDDQ 1.445 volt. In all my XMP profiles here provided by default for this kit, it has 1.45 volt. So by default, it's not going to be compatible with this 200S Boost overclocking profile. So I found a workaround for this one by going to my DDR5 voltage control. So you can see here, we can control our VDD and VDDQ voltages. So I just went ahead and kept sync mode on as it was in default, and it changed my voltages to 1.4 for both of VDD and VDDQ. And it's going to sync between the two kits because I have sync mode on, so it's going to have the same voltages. So it's going to be compatible in this way. Note here that even if you go back to enable this feature, it's still going to give you that it's not compatible. You need to restart your PC to apply those changes. So first what I did is putting them to 1.4 volt and having XMP profile 1 enabled. Press save and exit. So it's going to apply those new voltages for VDD and VDDQ. When I went back again and enabled 200S Boost overclocking, it worked. So you can see everything has been disabled here for memory and for CPU settings. So I didn't change anything in this setup. All are at default, and we can just go save and exit to apply them. So I'm going to compare 3 setups when doing the benchmarks and testing later on. The first one is the BIOS default factory settings. So the settings that you get when you get this motherboard when you reset BIOS. And the second setup with Intel 200S Boost overclocking profile, the ones that we have just said. And also I'm going to test Gigabyte PerfDrive Unleash mode. So PerfDrive is Gigabyte on overclocking preset profile. They have different ones, spec enhanced optimization and Unleash. And also I having other settings as well that I'm using nowadays. So I have CPU upgrade set to max performance profile as well, and I have enhanced multi-core performance enabled, and XMP profile set to 8000. And in CPU advanced settings, I have Intel Speed Shift technology is enabled, Intel Turbo Boost technology enabled, Energy Efficient Turbo is disabled, and Intel Turbo Boost technology is enabled. And finally, Intel Innovation Platform Framework DTT and such is enabled. So as you can see here, we have 3 setups: BIOS default, 200S Boost overclocking profile, and PerfDrive Unleash, running Cinebench R23 in multi-core and single-core test. So here are the results for CPU multi-core. We have 35,946 points. 200S Boost profile, it's down to 29,804, and in PerfDrive Unleash, it's the highest one, 36,790 points. And for single core, you can see we got 2,313 on BIOS default, 2,256 points on 200S Boost, and 2,266 on PerfDrive Unleash. So you can see that for single core, BIOS default is actually higher. The 200S Boost have it like somehow the same as PerfDrive Unleash, but we can tell that the 200S boost overclocking profile isn't targeted for enhanced multi-core performance. So it's mainly targeted for lower memory latency and better gaming performance. So it's mainly targeted for gaming more than productivity and rendering. So let's look at this chart after doing Cinebench R23 test. We can see that CPU max core VID is 1.39 volt for BIOS default, while with 200S boost is 1.276 volt. And in Gigabyte PerfDrive Unleash, it's at 1.344 volt. So 200S boost overclocking profile has the lowest core VID. Let's look now at P-Core max clock. So on default, it got to 5.5 GHz. Meanwhile, at 200S boost overclocking profile, it's 5.3 GHz for P-Cores. So you can see that it has lower P-Core frequency by 200 MHz. And finally, for Gigabyte PerfDrive Unleash, it's also 5.3 GHz. So it's similar to 200S boost. Now in E-Core Max Clock, it's 4.6 GHz, 4.7 GHz with 200S boost. So higher E-Core frequency, and also with Gigabyte PerfDrive Unleash, it's 4.7 GHz. Let's look now at the maximum CPU temperature. So BIOS default has reached 81 degrees Celsius. 200S boost overclocking profile reached only 66 degrees, 15 degrees lower than BIOS default. While on Gigabyte PerfDrive Unleash, it's the highest one at 85 degrees. So you can already tell that 200S boost isn't pushing the CPU too hard. It has great performance, however not the highest when it comes to multi-core. And you can see for PL1, for BIOS default, it's 250 watt, while with 200S boost, it's 125 watt. So it's lower by half when it comes to PL1. While on Gigabyte PerfDrive Unleash, it's the maximum wattage possible, which is 4095. So almost like unlimited power limit. For PL2, it's also the same for BIOS default, 250 watt, 177 watt for 200S boost. And finally, for Unleash, it's the same as the first one, so the maximum. Now let's look at CPU max power draw. At BIOS default, it reached 229 watt. Meanwhile, for 200S boost profile, it's 168 watt. So very, very low. It's even lower than PL2. And for Gigabyte PerfDrive Unleash, it's 249 watt. So we have here Gigabyte PerfDrive Unleash consuming the highest power. So almost like 80 watt difference and 200S boost. So that's quite nice. When you look at this chart, you can tell that 200S boost overclocking profile is definitely a very efficient way to overclock your CPU. Now we're gonna see in gaming, but we saw that in the productivity and rendering, it had lower multi-core performance, but still great temperature, lower power draw, great frequency, and very low voltage. Let's get on now to gaming because it's going to be quite interesting looking at those benchmarks. So I have tested those 3 setups in 10 games running at low settings in 1080p. So first we have Cyberpunk 2077 for CPU clock 5200 for BIOS default, and also for 200S boost it's 5300 MHz, so it gets to higher boosting clock by 100, and also PerfDrive Unleash has 5300 MHz. Now in terms of temperatures and power draw, they are a little bit different. With BIOS default being the lower in general, you can see that it has lower power consumption and lower temperature by like a little bit, while for 200S boost and PerfDrive Unleash, they are quite equal in terms of temperature and power draw. Perhaps Unleash has a tendency of going a little bit hotter and consuming more power. So we can see that in this FPS chart, we have for Cyberpunk 2077, 200S boost leading chart here. So it gives me an average FPS of 237, while PerfDrive Unleash 236 FPS, so pretty much equal. However, for BIOS default, it's definitely lower, 221 average FPS. And also, if you look at the low FPS, it's higher on 200S Boost, higher even than PerfDrive Unleash and BIOS default. So definitely the best results when it comes to gaming in this game, and still not power consuming as Unleash. So you can notice here like CPU power draw is 133 watt, while for 200S Boost in the same scene 118 watt. So definitely lower power consumption and temperature. So next game we have is Black Myth Wukong, also at low settings 1080p. You can see again the same kind of a trend. We have a lower clock on BIOS default, lower by 100 compared to 200S Boost and PerfDrive Unleash. So looking at the FPS chart, you can see that in this game, like depending on the GPUs that you are going to use, maybe in mine I got bottlenecked by the GPU. So you can see that they have the same kind of performance. For Unleash, it's 156. For 200S Boost, it's 155.9. And for BIOS default, it's 154.7. So a little bit similar in this game. It depends on the title. However, we're going to see great gaps later on. Like only those two games seem to be a little bit similar, but in other games, when you are not bottlenecked by GPU, it's going to be quite different. Like in this Counter-Strike 2 at low settings 1080p benchmark, we can see great stuff. So you can see with 200S Boost profile, it got to 601.7 FPS, higher than PerfDrive Unleash at 585.8, and much higher than BIOS default at 557. So almost like a 40 FPS increase in this setup, going from BIOS default to 200S Boost. And also you have higher low FPS for 200S Boost compared to the other setups. So quite nice. This title, I saw a quite significant difference. Now in this fourth titles that we have, Horizon Zero Dawn at low settings 1080p, also the same kind of trend. Looking at the chart, you can see PerfDrive Unleash 261.8, 200S Boost give us 259, so almost the same as PerfDrive Unleash, not really quite different. But you can see here that BIOS default is indeed lower at 249. So definitely, like you can see, 17 FPS different between BIOS default and 200S Boost. So also better loss as well. Quite nice. Like when you look at it in this way, you can start to recognize that 200S Boost is indeed doing its job compared to BIOS default, and it's even competing with PerfDrive Unleash while still having good warranty and all. Let's look now at another title, Metro Exodus, at low 1080p. Let's look at the chart. You can see 200S Boost give us 204.8, PerfDrive Unleash 201.4, and BIOS default 193.1. So you can see the difference here is definitely quite evident. So like 10 FPS on average and better low FPS. Now we'll get on to another title, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, low settings at 1080p. We can see in the chart a great gap in this one. For PerfDrive Unleash, we got 311.1, so the highest score. However, 200S Boost isn't far behind and 305.4 FPS, so not really that far behind than PerfDrive Unleash, while with BIOS default, it's 262.8. Looking at this chart, you can already tell the difference, like BIOS default is definitely lower than the other two. In this another title, we have Dirt 5 low 1080p, a great racing game. You can see at FPS chart, for PerfDrive Unleash, we have 426.6, 200S Boost overclocking profile give us 414. So a little bit different in this one. It's the higher on PerfDrive Unleash. However, BIOS default is way lower at 382. Quite low on BIOS default compared to 200S boost. Not really that high between 200S boost and PerfDrive Unleash. However, PerfDrive Unleash tends to run a little bit hotter as we all saw, and it consumes more power. So you can see like when we had 91 watt on 200S boost, it was 103 on PerfDrive Unleash in the same scene. So not really that efficient. Now looking at the Age of Mythology Retold, low 1080p. This also it's integrated benchmark, so the same scene. We have for scores, you can see here it has benchmark results. So on BIOS default, we got 1782, while on 200S boost, it got to 1815, and it's exactly the same as PerfDrive Unleash. So surprisingly, it was exactly the same as PerfDrive Unleash, while BIOS default is a little bit lower. So it shows here that in terms of performance, 200S boost is indeed doing a great job at gaming. So you see here in this chart, it got even higher average FPS than PerfDrive Unleash, 155.2 compared to 150, and at BIOS default, it's 125.7. So quite significant in this title, like 25 FPS on average than BIOS default, and also way better loss, like you can see at 0.2 percentile FPS, 52.3 compared to 94.8. Quite significant performance uplift going from BIOS default to 200S boost. So in this title, in Rainbow Six Siege, low 1080p, so you can see here in this chart, for PerfDrive Unleash, it got average of 574.4, while with 200S boost, it got to 566, and with BIOS default, 561 average FPS. And finally, in Assassin's Creed Shadows at low 1080p, we see in this chart that PerfDrive Unleash gave us 103.2 FPS, while 200S boost gave us 103 and BIOS default 101.5. So quite the same in this title, because perhaps we are getting bottlenecked by GPU. So you can, like in titles, when you are being bottlenecked by GPU, you're not gonna see much of difference at all at this resolution, even at low. If you are going to use a better GPU than AMD Radeon RX 7800 XT, you're gonna see more difference, but in titles that are already demanding, it's not going to show much of an uplift. So guys, that was it for this video. I really hope that you found it useful. In my opinion, the 200S boost overclocking profile is definitely a great start. And it's nice that Intel came with a way to boost their CPUs for gaming. Like as you saw, it was purely made for gaming and not really so much for productivity and rendering. It had lower multi-core score. However, for gaming, it's way better than BIOS default and even more efficient than PerfDrive Unleash. So definitely a great feature on Intel Core Ultra 200 desktop CPUs. And I hope that AMD follows with a similar feature that's going to boost your gaming performance while still retaining warranty. So it's nice that Intel is now covering warranty for 8000 MTS memory speed. So definitely a great start, and I hope that we're gonna see something even better in the future from Intel. But really, it consumes so much less power, and it has lower thermals. So you saw that it doesn't really get as much hot as BIOS default and the Unleash mode, and it's quite efficient in my opinion, taking it to the next level with this series of CPUs. So definitely a great way to boost your CPU with one-click feature, and I hope that they improve it or make different profiles like for productivity and such. So we're gonna see how Intel improve upon this feature. Let me know in the comments below what you think about it. Did you already activate it or planning to do so? And thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the sword. Support me and to stay tuned for more videos that I'm going to release for this CPU and this setup. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.